Okay, so in this particular tutorial video, we've already created the structure of our site and we went down from top to bottom. We have the div wrapper that's around all the other content, and that's followed by the header that will have the logo, the nav with the navigation, slideshow will go in the div with an ID of slider, then we have the main and the aside that'll sit left and right, and the footer that'll be underneath both. Inside of all of the, or that is all inside of the body tag. And so now what we need to do is we need to be able to arrange these. The best way to do this is to add garish colors so you can see what's doing what. So I'm going to go to the CSS designer and I'm going to click on each area and start adding the selectors first. Now, I can split this and I'll go ahead and collapse the properties. And sometimes when you split it, it's easier to see what exactly you should create selectors for. So I'm going to click on body and hit plus. And for right now, I'm just going to add all the selectors for all of the structure in my site. So I'll click div ID equals wrapper and hit enter return. Then I'll click header and plus. And I don't actually want it. You could leave this hashtag wrapper in front of there because basically it's saying the header that's in the wrapper. So if for some reason you had a header like at the top that wasn't in the wrapper, this is identifying this as a unique header so that you can style this one and not the one that's outside of the wrapper. But our site is really simple, so we're going to just get rid of that. All right, so again, click on nav, hit plus, and just keep going all the way down. Now, for each of these, I am going to first, after I create the selectors, I'm going to add a background color. And the reason why is because I want to see what everything is doing. I'm going to take it all out, all the background colors out after the fact, because for the majority of them, I just actually want the color of the site to come through the wrapper rule. But if you add those colors, you'll be able to see what's doing what and how they're sitting. And when you have a problem, it's easier to see what is doing what. So we have all of our structure now. So I'm going to go back through and do what I just said, and I am going to add background colors. So I'm going to uncheck show set because I don't have any properties and values set right now. So for the body tag, I'm going to go to the background section and go to background color. And I always make my body gray so that it looks concrete because I know that the body is going to be there no matter what. Every site has the body tag. So then I'm going to click on the wrapper and I pick my least favorite color because then it's easy for me to say, you know, what's what. And when I see the wrapper, sometimes I don't want to see it. So when I see yellow, I'm like, okay, something's up. I'm seeing the wrapper for some reason. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that. So as you can see, because the wrapper surrounds all of this content looks yellow right now. But then I can go to header and I can change it to, and I like to do like warm and cold colors. Just so I can easily see the difference. So I'll go to nav, and now you can see why I kind of do it all at once, because then I'm always on this background section, so it makes it a lot faster. So let's do a warm color of like orange, and then we'll go to the slider and we'll do a purple, and main, which we will do sort of a red. And then the aside, which we can do green. Okay, and then the footer, let's do hot pink. Okay, so that looks terrible, but there's a good reason for that. Again, it shows us what's what. Another thing you can see is when you start taking this content out and you see a color and you're like, okay, I know that that box is that color, so if there's something else wrong with that box, you can just look for that color, and then you know what rule is causing the problem. Okay, so let's start going through some of the rules. Now, for me, with the body tag, normally what I do is I actually change the font style in here so that it changes it globally, especially if I have a really dark background. But because I don't really know what my site's going to look like yet, or I should before this point, but yeah, for right now, I'm not going to change any of the pretty kind of stuff. I'm just working on structure right now. So with the wrapper, when I want it to sit in the middle, I have to make it a certain width and have auto left and right margins so that it automatically is sitting in the center. So if I go to wrapper, I'm going to go to the layout section and go to width and choose 960 pixels. Now, if you don't have a lot of content on your site or it's a little tiny site, you can put 800. If yours is a really big site, you can put 1200 if you wanted to do liquid width where it would squash based on the screen size, which is harder to create but actually really good for mobile devices. Then you can do a percentage in here. But 960 is a good rule of thumb because we can divide it easily and use a grid system. So we're going to just leave it 960 because that's basically the standard. But notice that it automatically wants to sit on the left of your site. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually do auto left and right margin. So it takes the remaining margin and automatically divides it on the left and right. So it's always sitting in the center. So go to the margin section, click on the PX and choose auto for the left and auto for the right. Okay, so now it's sitting right in the center. Now, another thing that I'm seeing is see how it has this gap above it? Well, that's because it's still using the generic style sheet that every browser has for a website. And it's adding some padding and margin in there that is pretty helpful for a new designer, but sometimes it's frustrating because you try to design something and you think it should be 20 pixels and it ends up being 30 pixels because the generic style sheet already added 10 into there. Or in this instance, I don't want my website to have that little gap. I actually want it to touch the very top of the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and do something called the global selector and hit the plus sign up here and type the asterisk key and then hit enter or return. So basically the global selector is saying select everything, the entire site. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the margins and make them 0 pixels. So in order to make that work, if you see this italics, it means that it's not actually 0 pixels. But if I click on pixels and then click on pixels again, you'll see that it's not italic font and now it got rid of that. So again, I'll do that same thing with the padding so that the global selector is basically just 0 margin pixels and 0 pixels of padding. So that's going to make things a little bit harder for us. We're going to have to add some padding and margin into all of those different selectors later. But now we know that we can control it ourselves. All right, so when I'm looking at the wrapper, it's the parent of all these others, meaning it surrounds all these others. So this is the parent and this is the child. So the parent of the wrapper is the body. The parent of the header is the wrapper. And if we had something in the main, like another structure tag, we'd say the parent of that tag would be the main, etc. So what happens is every tag within that parent will take on the properties of that parent unless you tell it otherwise. So because the parent, the wrapper, is 960 pixels, all these other tags are 960 pixels automatically. So my logo is going to be the full width of the screen. I don't need to make it a certain width because it's automatically 960. My navigation, I want it to be 962, so I don't need to worry about that. Same for the slideshow. So, and I'm going to come in here, new div tag slider, because I need it to say slider there. So all the rest of these are fine. All right. All right, so the only ones that are different are the main and the aside, because the main I want it to sit on the left and the aside I want it to sit on the right. So I'm going to click on main and go to width, and I have 960 pixels to divide. So I kind of want the main to be 2/3 and the aside to be 1/3. So if we took it to just 900, so our side is 960, but it's easier to divide 900 into 3, then I can assume I can make this 600 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and type 600, and for some reason Mac types 2 6s in there. I don't know why it's doing this, but people in Dreamweaver, pay attention. This needs to be fixed. Okay, so the aside, I'm going to again change the same thing. I'm going to come over here and change it to 300 pixels. God dang it. Okay, so that just changed the width, and now you can see the yellow of the wrapper behind it. And so again, that helps me to see what's what and how they're sitting. But I need this aside to move over to the right. And in order to do that, I have to tell both the main and the aside to actually float a certain direction. So when I click on main, I'm going to choose to float left. And when I click on aside, come on, main. Oh, maybe it did. When I click on aside, I'm going to choose float right. So they did float and it looks good, and main is now on the left and aside is on the right, and it has like a 60 pixel gap in there. Notice though that the pink footer is actually floating under it, and that's because when structure has floated elements above it, it doesn't see those floated elements and it moves up underneath it. Now inline stuff like text sees the floated elements, so that's why content is over here. But technically there's pink under this red and there's pink under this green. In order to make that stop happening, go to the footer and choose clear both. Okay, so now you can see that tiny little sliver of a wrapper that shows you that it's still behind there. But right now, at this point, the structure is correct for the site. Now what we need to do is we just need to start adding all of the pretty into it.